Windhager, Wood, inside 50, Wanganeen Miller! What a mark!
G'day everyone and welcome to the GameDay Squad Aussie Rules Fantasy Show. I'm Pity, that's Haz, and together we are the Fantasy Bros. We've partnered with GameDay Squad to bring you everything you need to know to succeed in GDS Aussie Rules this season. And Haz, after a long season, mate, we're finally previewing the last round of the home and away season for season 2026. How are you going after a big round 23?
Mate, I said it last week, the finish line is in sight. Last round before, obviously, our new, our final series kicks off. But no, looking forward to round 24. It's going to be an interesting round, I think. And I think a lot of it's going to come back down to team lists on Thursday afternoon. I think coaches might potentially have to make some changes to their sides with some potential restings involved, obviously, in our last round with some either dead rubbers or teams that can't really move up the ladder or down the ladder. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I think it's going to really test some coaches out this week. But anyway, how are you going, mate?
Yeah, pretty good, mate. And it's an interesting point you raise. Hey, like I feel like this week, yes, it's only 1 week to go, but gee, I think a lot could really change on the leaderboards just in 1 week, particularly given, all of the uncertainties we might have rolling into this week. So I think it'll be very, very interesting, that's for sure. But again, just to all our viewers and listeners, thanks for all your support this season. We've really appreciated it. If you haven't given us a follow across socials already, make sure you do so. It's at FantasyBros AU. We've got heaps of things going on. Obviously, the boys are getting into NFL. The NRL and Aussie rules going strong right in the finals. We've got the women's Aussie rules. EPL kicks off. It's almost too much going on at times. Yeah, exactly right. Use that code on screen, FBAR26. Get yourself 3 9-player common packs. And once again, we just appreciate all of your support. Again, it's been our first season, and it's just been so good just having so many people with really positive feedback for us.
Yeah, 100%. The community is amazing in GameDay Squad.
Oh, yeah. Now, mate, around the grounds, how'd you go for round 23? Kick us off.
Yeah, not a bad round. 5th in FantasyBros Sunday Showdown, but it kind of hurts when you have a good result after the week you get knocked out.
Yeah.
I kind of just wish that was the week prior. But I'll definitely take that considering I played a diamond Charlie Curnow as my Sunday superstar, and he looked like he was on for a massive one in the first 5 minutes of the game, and then he really cooled. But to finish 5th there with Charlie Curnow not even scoring 100, I'll definitely take that. 8th in contender, so my pod side keeps plugging away there. And then 2 top 20 finishes in challenger and under 22s. But annoyingly, worst result, which is my main comp, which is classic, which was 22nd for the week. And I know that's not necessarily a bad result. It's just annoying that one of your worst results is your main comp that you're trying to prioritize for the season. So hopefully I can bounce back there this week and maybe make a move up the leaderboard to finish the season. But what about yourself?
Let's hope not. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't want you moving too far. You can jump, Sloth, I think, who's in between us, but maybe not too far beyond that. Let's hope. All right. My best finish there in Sundays as well, just like you, 11th there. So it was okay. I think I've had some really good weeks in a row across all standing comps. But this one was, again, it was probably okay, but probably not as good as what I have done in the past. I had, best finish was 11th. I then had a 14th and a 15th place finish in contender and challenger. 23rd, so close to you in classic there, mate, just outside that top 20. So again, like a pretty good week all in all. But it was really just one decision really across those 3 comps that really hurt me, which we'll talk about in no doubt just a second. And in fact, we might jump straight into it now.
I was going to say, just talk about him now, mate. You may as well.
Lachie Neale. No, he's not a lock. I don't know what he is, but 50, what was it, 59, I think it was from memory, which is just not going to get it done. And that really burned us when you had Harry Sheasel also get injured on 59. So you're going to have to take one of them.
Yeah.
It's a kick in the guts, really. And yeah, especially when other mids, you look at an Isaac Heaney and, there's even an Ed Richards, for example, and probably a few others, even a Matty Rao getting just over 100, Dunkley just over 100. Any of those would be much better. So you're coughing up like 50 points there at least. And in, the case of an Isaac Heaney over 100. So yeah, that one really, really stings. And it's going to make it very hard to pick a Lachie Neale this week in particular.
Yeah.
The finals might be different, but definitely this week. But I'll just jump on the flip side, mate. My 2 stars were another 2 Lockies instead. Lockie Witt and Lockie Ash. What a bounce back from Lockie Ash in particular. We sort of said on any other sort of season where you had numbers back in that back line where he'd be in question, right? But
Yeah.
we said, no, stick Fatty. He's a good player. He hasn't gone really below 100 too many times outside of not last week, the week before. And he bounced back with that massive 160 plus point performance against the Eagles at NG Stadium, which was so good to see. He's still got the ceiling. And then Lockie Whitfield also, we were a bit concerned about the Milan Murdoch tag, although it hadn't eventuated the weeks prior to that. So we thought probably can't fade just because of that. And he showed you why. 135 was very nice in our backlines this week.
Yeah, Lockie's all around the board, the good and the
Lockie,
bad.
Lockie,
Hey?
Lockie. Yeah.
But no, those 2 giant boys, it's good to see them back in form. And, probably coaches didn't really look to play some salary on them last week just to play it a little bit safe. But I think you can probably maybe come back to that nice kind of feeling of maybe putting some salary on them this week. I think they've kind of found that sweet spot. And I think
Against Adelaide.
be looking to maybe finish the season in a strong performance. But yeah, the matchup's probably not the greatest for them. But yeah, potentially could be a bit of a salary pod there, maybe for coaches across competitions. For myself, I think it's hard to look past Max Hall as my star. Just what a game he had. It was absolutely everywhere. 40 disposals, 1 goal, 10 marks, 6 tackles, absolutely stuffing the stats across all areas of GameDay squad against one of the easiest teams to play against in the Richmond Tigers. 184 GDS points, and thanks to that silver in Classic, 202 GDS points in my forward line, which I think over anytime someone scores 200 points in a forward line with salary in probably not even just a forward line in any position in GameDay squad, you absolutely take and you run away with it and just move on because he was unreal. And no doubt we'll probably look to target him once again this week just with the form that he's in. One that's a little bit disappointing, probably tossed up between 2 Ds here. Tom Sparrow was a little bit disappointing for maybe the first time in a long time. But Jake Bowie, I think he had probably the better matchup for defenders. And I actually put some salary on him as well because Port were leaking quite a few points in previous games before last week. And he come out and only scored the 87 GDS points, which was his second lowest score of the season and first under 100 since round 17. So a little bit disappointing there. And obviously, like you kind of mentioned earlier, once we kind of had Lockie Neal on our sides, we had Harry Sheasel go down. It meant that Jake Bowie was definitely counting for us. And obviously, for one to not over get 90 was a little bit frustrating in what was a good matchup for him. But I think we're potentially coming back to him against this week because he's got another juicy matchup again.
Yeah, it does. And we'll definitely get to that in that defender section there, mate. And those listening along, drop a comment as well. Get on YouTube, jump on there, drop a comment. Who are your stars and scars from the week that was? Because, yeah, there were some massive scores going around. Hey, that Saturday game was absolutely filthy between the Saints and the Tigers with, Brad Hill, Max Hall, Cal Wilkie as well for the most part, or at least the first half. They just absolutely racked. They did what they wanted. So it was really good. Makes you wonder what the Cats can do. Hey?
100%.
But before we get to the fixtures, let's have a quick look. The GDS Cup update and the Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown playoffs as well. Congratulations to our mate, good friend of the pod, Bales, coach of Bales Nails there, who got over the coach who knocked us both out of the cup and knocked out Arnie Booger as well. Don't forget that. In Hastings Hornet. So, yeah, what a win there for Bales to get over the top of the Hornet, who's just been flying this season once again, just being how good a coach he is, but reminds us how good a coach Bales is as well. He's having a good season too. Don't sleep on Bales. And I think that this matchup here, Russman and Bales Nails, I think that's going to be an absolute blinder, particularly in such a crazy and hectic week. I just think it's going to be so interesting to see how that matchup plays out.
Yeah, 100%. And all the best to Bales. Hopefully he can pull it off and, we can kind of claim one for the Fantasy Bros because he is basically the third Fantasy Bro. So, but just looking at Russman there, obviously his rank going into the GDS Cup, 22nd in the overall ranks. He's now flying up to 4th, which is just a crazy run of form. And I know he's overtaken you, so you're a little bit salty about that. But he is absolutely flying. So like you're right, it should be an absolute cracker and can't wait to see who comes out on top in that one. And then obviously probably a bigger upset in the semi-finals of the Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown. We saw Jurgen, otherwise known as Denny D, go down to Izzy in their semi-final. Obviously, I think both of those boys finished in the top. I think it was 8 for the round. So unfortunate there for Denny D to go down to Izzy. And then obviously Stephen's Heroes also got over the top of Big Boys, who knocked me out of the Fantasy Bros. So we've got an Izzy versus Stephen final to take away the $5,000 in cash.
That is massive, isn't it? And good luck to both those boys involved, Stevens Heroes and Izzy. But yeah, that's a huge win there for Izzy too. I'm glad that he did get the win. Nothing against Danny D as well. Very good coach there as well. Love him. But yeah, it's nice when you see someone who knocked you out sort of hopefully go all the way. So fingers crossed. But good luck to everyone involved in these finals. And obviously, Consolation Cup is still going too. So there's still $250 up for grabs to the coach who didn't make the playoffs and has had the highest score since that round, which I think was 21 from memory. So yeah, good luck to all those involved in that as well. It's a big week of footy. And speaking of, let's check out the fixtures for our round 24. So starting with our primetime fixtures, Thursday the 20th of August, we have the Saints against the Suns at Marvel Stadium. And then on Friday night, we have the Pies up against the Lions at the MCG, which will be an absolute belter and a really nice preview as to what a final match at the G could look like before next week with the wildcard finals. So there are your 4 teams for prime time. You've got the Saints, the Suns, the Magpies, and the Lions. The Saturday games, we have the Blues up against the Dockers first. We then have the Demons up against the Bulldogs, the Cats against the Tigers down at GMHBA, and then we have the Crows against the Giants over there in Adelaide. And our Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown fixtures, Sunday the 23rd of August, we have the Bombers up against Port Adelaide. I believe that's at Marvel Stadium as well, under the lid, if I'm not mistaken there, Has.
Yeah.
And then we have the Swans against the Kangaroos and the Eagles against the Hawks over in the West to close out the round and the home and away season. What are your thoughts having a look at that? Because you alluded to a few good points earlier about a few dead rubber games, a few things on the line, and so it's an interesting read this week.
Yeah, look, there's probably not really a game that stands out to me. I think Carlton Freo should be a good game if everyone gets named, but once again, I think Carlton can only go up one spot, and Freo's sewn up the minor premiership, so who knows what's going to happen there. Lions Collingwood should be a cracker, but Collingwood can't.
They're travelling for that too, aren't they? Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that Marvel or
No,
MCG?
it's at Marvel. So I believe, it's at Marvel. Lions Pies should be cracker, but other than that, maybe the D's and Bulldogs have probably got a bit to play for. The D's have got a top 4 opportunity on the line if they get over the Dogs and other results go their way. So maybe that's the game of the round, and the Dogs will be looking to bounce back to some form before the wild card after that really impressive draw last week against Carlton without Bont. I think they would actually be happy with that result after probably going down early on in that game as well. So probably looking at some of those games, Sunday Showdown fixtures don't look too crash hot. Hawks should be pretty dominant in that one to round out the season.
Yeah, you'd think so. It's over there in the West. That's all. And the Eagles have looked pretty good too this year. I think they've definitely shown some improvement. So an interesting round. And let's just preface all of this by saying everything we talk about tonight has an asterisk on it because of that Thursday night team release, right? We've got to keep an eye on teams. So there's going to be lots of players we talk about here tonight. You just got to have your eye on the teams, look at what that might mean, and make your decisions there. We've obviously got the Sydney Swans issue that's happened as well. That's happened Sunday. So that might have implications for a few players there we might have to keep in mind. So, they're probably the 2 little things we'll mention off the top.
Yeah.
But otherwise, let's look at our defender picks for round 24. I can't believe I'm saying round 24, mate. So our plug and plays, we're down to 3 still. We have Lockie Ash, Lockie Whitfield, and Dane Zorko. Happy with, I guess, we'll have to be happy with all those 3, right? Zorko's got a good matchup there in Collingwood this week. Ash and Whit, I think you're just playing them. I think Whitfield, from memory, has got actually some good numbers against the Crows, although they're not a good matchup for opposition defenders and designated kickers, particularly at Adelaide Oval. But it is one to mention. I think we're probably picking all those 3. So we then go into a Josh Dacos, a John Noble, and a Jake Bowie. Where do you want to start? Who do you want to talk about? Out of those three, who might be enticing you the most?
It's probably Josh Dacos. Kind of sat here last week and talked about that matchup with Hawthorn. And once again, looking at those matchups, he's probably got the hardest matchup of all of them.
Yeah.
But I think he's just scoring consistently at the moment. He's showing that they want the ball in his hands. We talked about last week the injuries that the Pies have got in that back line at the moment. It's basically Dacos or bust. That's both varieties of Dacos's, that is. So I find it hard, even though he's coming into the Lions matchup, who are the hardest matchup for the season and the second hardest matchup over the last 5 weeks. I think he's still going to be good being at the MCG. I'm not too really concerned. So I think he should be a safe pick again this week.
The only other thing I'll add to that as well, because I feel like I need to pick him as well, just given how popular he's going to be and just the form he's been in, the MCG factor for that reason you just mentioned. But the only thing I'll mention in terms of that DVP, like having a look at DFS as well, like sorting by designated kickers, the Lions are the third worst in the past 5 weeks for designated kickers. Those players are scoring about -8 points on their average, so it's 8 points under their average. And I think part of that could be even due to the role that Connor McKenna is playing on some of those kickers. We saw what the role he did on a Ajam and Impey. Archie Rops, he went to him when they played. I think Charlie did a bit as well, actually. But they've been relying on Connor McKenna for these attacking players like a Josh Dacos. And if I'm looking at the CBAs, he had 0% CBAs last week, 8% the week before, 11% the week before that. Just makes me wonder if he's kind of behind the ball. You would imagine if Connor McKenna is going to go to him, hey?
You would think so. But I think just this week with the options and look, you might be in a position where you want to chase points and you go, that's enough of a flag for me. But I still think he could potentially rack up. Obviously, the MCG, a lot bigger ground.
Still have the outs down there too.
And that's it. So
it'll take the kick-ins. I think he's been taking more kick-ins too.
And
recently.
if I'm looking at like his recent scoring against Brisbane, I've just pulled it up. He's gone 100, 122, 134, 115, 115, 112 in his last 6 games for an average of 116. So I think he's just going to be consistent. He's going to be reliable. You probably know what you're going to get. You might not get a potential ceiling game from him, but you're probably going to lock in, we'll say, a safe 105, if not even a little bit more. So this week with probably limited options, I'm probably looking there.
He and Dan Houston have had the monopoly of the kick-ins over the past few weeks with Howe and Perryman out. So they had Houston took 7 last week, played on from all 7. Josh Dacos took 5, played on from all 5. But I just feel like Josh Dacos is looking like the man back there if I'm picking one of them. Isaac Quainer took 1 last week. So it's clear they kind of want the ball in the hands of a Josh and a Nick as well. We kind of talked about last week. The only other thing I might be really keen on, just whatever happens at teams, right? If there's any inkling that he could also go through the midfield, which I guess they can do at any moment, it's probably something that's going to entice me even more. But yeah, I think he's a solid pick, like you've just mentioned.
Or
now, John Note.
Teams come in and someone like we know Jeremy Harrell's not coming back in, but maybe a Harry Perryman might be back. That could potentially maybe sway me the other way, knowing that at the moment he is getting the monopoly, and if someone else comes back in, that ball use could potentially be limited. And obviously, if he's going to cop attention, then it is going to really limit the scoring opportunities. So that's potentially the other if as well.
The other thing with Perryman is he doesn't take the kick-ins. Like, he sort of can get some of the footy. He'll find a bit of it when they chip it around the ground and that sort of thing. And he's a pretty solid player, but he hasn't taken a kick-in this year. That's the only thing. So it's Jeremy Howe. That's the one that you'd need to worry about that. But obviously, he's not going to be coming back in. He's had the second most kick-ins for the season. He's taken... how many is that? 67. So that's the equal most with Dan Houston for the whole season. So he's the one. And then Perryman hasn't taken a single one, or he might have had one potentially, and he's not on the list. But yeah, I reckon for me, I probably wouldn't be too... Like, I'm not going to let the Perryman factor sort of change that for me. But you're right. It'd just be another player into the mix. But he should be okay. I feel like maybe it's overthinking it, sort of looking to go away from him. But it is an interesting point around the fact they play Brisbane and they've been using McKenna in that way.
Just looking at another one that we kind of haven't really mentioned much is Maynard as well. He's also been out of the side. So just having a look at Collingwood's injury report, and Howe, Maynard, and still Sidebottom, but it doesn't really impact defenders. But Howe and Maynard are both named as tests for this weekend. So that is interesting. Perryman's still 2 to 3 weeks, but if Howe and or Maynard both got up, that could be potentially something to consider.
Yeah, something to look for then. Again, I think, yeah, Maynard would be the one I reckon I'd be okay with as well, potentially, because he doesn't take too many kick-ins. But again, that's probably why I keep an eye on teams, but Josh Akers should be good again. John Noble, now, I wasn't keen on him because they're playing away from home. They're playing at Marvel Stadium. Yes, it's against St Kilda, but I do want to flag that St Kilda probably haven't been the best matchup recently for our opposition defenders and our designated kickers, or at least not to the extent that we sort of thought. So they're sitting as the fourth best matchup for the whole season. But then if you sort by the last 5 games, for example, this is all coming out real funny at the moment in Stats Lab, but yeah, see, they're really like middle of the table, slightly negative for those opposition defenders, and even just sorting by designated kickers. Again, more neutral. So, if anything, slightly positive for the designated kicker type. So, it doesn't suggest too much, which is why he didn't stand out to me initially. I know he's been an option all year. I know he possesses a ceiling, but do you want to share your thoughts on a John Noble? Because it's really kind of twisted my arm into seriously considering him in my side. And maybe it was crazy to not be considering as seriously as I probably am now.
I think even the last couple of weeks, just for John Noble, like obviously, we've looked at his scoring throughout the season and he likes to score at home. And like you mentioned, this is going to be an away game. But even the last 2 weeks, 98 and 93 against the Giants and the Lions aren't necessarily absolutely stinkers of scores. And this week, I think it's just going to be the game style that kind of dictates Noble's scoring. Coming up against the Saints on a Thursday night in an absolute dead rubber that absolutely means probably nothing except for maybe looking to next season for both of these sides. There could be a lot of uncontested footy, and no doubt this is probably going to be a bit of a theme throughout the show that we'll talk about it with the midfielders as well. If it's an uncontested game, then we know both the Saints and the Suns really like to chip it around and rack up these mark numbers and kick numbers in the back line. I think Noble's going to be forefront to that. In the game earlier in the season, and I know this was played in Darwin, so different conditions, different type of game style, Noble scored 159 GDS points. So if that game kind of translates into this last game that I think is going to be a lot of chip, then I think Noble should be good. And obviously, if you're chasing the ceiling in this last round and trying to make some ground, then he's your guy. And even still, if it's not that, he's going to be maybe a safe 90 plus with that upside. So I don't mind him this week.
And popular. Yeah. Before that before that round 9 game this year against the Saints, they played round 11 last year, 108 against them there as well. So you know what it's like when you've had a couple of good games against the side and you come back out and you just have that sort of feeling that you can have a good game. So, yeah, he's one that I'm really liking now to round out my back line quite nicely. And like you said with the Jake Bowie as well, I think he's one that we just have to play again. Yes, he gave us that poor score last week. It was disappointing, but they're coming up against the Bulldogs this week, who are the best matchup for opposition defenders and for designated kickers. Sorting by DFS again for designated kickers, they are nearly plus 20 points on the average for a designated kicker, like fantasy points, mind you. They are just leaking so many points back there to those players. And then sorting by, DVP through Stats Lab, for example, they're clearly the best by a good 6 points there in the last 5 games. So I think that you have to be chasing matchups in this last week. Like, you have to be looking at them, and this is one. So if you're picking a Melbourne defender, you're not picking a Trent Rivers. You can't look there. Like last week, I know Mian hit me up about that, saying, hey, could Trent Rivers be a shout? And I was like, yeah, maybe the matchup is there against Port, but I didn't feel, and neither did Mian, we didn't feel like you had to be sort of going down that far the list, right? We've got lots of players at the top. If you're picking a Melbourne defender, you're picking Jake Bowie. He's still taking most of those kick-ins there for Melbourne. He's still the man when it comes to moving that ball. They have split the kick-ins last week, actually, funnily enough. So he was taking the most, but then they did spread it around. However, I think this sort of game here, it's the chipping the footy around in the back line, it's the marks, those plus 7s. That's on offer here. And I think that's one that I'm pretty keen to chase. In terms of a Jake Bowie as well, I'll just pull up what he has done there against the Doggies. While I
I've got
do
it up
that,
already if you want me to.
yeah, hit
So
me with it.
113 in round 11 this season, and that was thanks to 27 disposals, which were 19 kicks, 8 handballs, 5 marks, 2 tackles. He had 7 kick-ins in that game. Before that, in 2025, 88 GDS points, and before that, in 2024, 112. So I think he's just going to be safe and probably reliable. I know I thought that last week, but I think this matchup is even better. The Dogs are the easiest matchup, not only for the season, but they're the easiest matchup over the last 5 weeks. And we saw last week the Carlton boys absolutely rack it up. Ollie Florent had a day back there. Adam Chera racked up as well on that halfback flank. So I think he should be in for a good one.
Yeah, I like it. And I like some of the points of difference as well on screen. In particular, there's one I like probably above the others, and the others are probably there for that matchup, right? So in terms of the one I'm liking the most, it's a Jace Burgoyne again this week. I liked him last week. I went away from him in the end, but again, it probably didn't sort of worry me too much because he didn't sort of burn me. But I think this week is one where he could put up a really nice score. So Jace Burgoyne last week against the Demons, he put up a 113. And in fact, Miles Bergman as well, he also put up a 113 against the Demons too. So I reckon that you could probably have a look at them this week. In terms of those CBAs, because I think that was the thing. They had Horn Francis come back. Oh, no, sorry. He stayed in the side last week. They then brought Joe Richards back into the side, and that's what kind of scared me off picking a Jace Burgoyne in a classic. I was like, oh, it's just that midfield mix has changed a little bit. So I wasn't quite sure what it was going to look like. But in terms of that midfield mix there, it was Jordan Sweet, obviously, their ruckman. Horn Francis had the next most. Willem Drew, Ollie Wines. They were sort of the midfield rotation, which is what I thought it was going to be. Joe Richards was next in line. So he had... Actually, you know what? He was actually the number one. It's just the way it's sorting is funny.
Yeah.
So it was Jordan Sweet and Joe Richards, equal most. So Richards was the number one banana, funnily enough. Then Horn Francis, then Willem Drew, then Ollie Wines, and then a Jace Burgoyne had 9% CBAs. The 4 weeks prior to that, he'd had 52%, 42%, 74%, 60%. So the concern I had around maybe not going to the midfield, that was exactly there. The question now, though, this week is that they're coming into probably the best matchup for midfielders, if that hasn't changed, or which it has actually in the last 5 weeks. Essendon are the third best matchup for opposition midfielders, which is down a little bit from probably what it was. Like if you're sorting by the season, it's still the second best matchup for the season. And the thing there is that obviously Horn Francis goes out, right? So there's a big market share of points that come out of the side, and they're coming up against that third best matchup in the past 5 weeks. That surely he gets a bit of a bump, right? You would think that he starts to go back through the midfield there. The only other one might be a Miles Bergman as well. So he also had his CBAs reduced last week too. He went down to 0%. So he was just behind the ball, clearly. So I think it would be more... Oh, maybe is it a bit speculative then? Like if they don't have the CBAs last week, yes, we've got Horn Francis coming out this week. Like who would you feel more confident in going? It's probably a Jace Burgoyne, right? I feel like he's the talent out of those two. I think Bergman's a quality player, of course, but he's a bit of a workhorse at the same time.
Yeah, I think I'm Burgoyne. And actually just having a look at his positional kind of data from last week. He actually took 5 kick-ins, which was the equal highest for Port last week alongside Lockie Jones. And that's the
Nice.
first time he's had kick-ins since round 15. So that suggests to me, I didn't actually get a chance to watch this game, but this suggests to me that he actually played on the halfback flank. I know he got named on the wing, but it looks like he kind of went behind the ball a little bit. Got involved that way. His defensive map, he had 65% of his touches in the defensive half compared to only 35 in the offensive half. So, look, you're right. Potentially with Jason Horn-Francis being out, Zach Butters probably still not going to play, even though he wants to. Maybe he does get thrown into the midfield mix, but it's interesting that Joe Richards comes back from injury, gets thrown back in straight away as the number one banana. Willem Drew and Ollie Wines are still going to be there. Maybe Burgoyne and Bergman share a bit of a role between halfback, midfield, who knows? But I think regardless, you just got to look at the matchup and probably look at his form as well. He's gone 113, 162, 122 in his last 3. So I think you lock it in. And plus the Essendon matchup, we've targeted all season. Why not? Why would we stop now in the last round?
Last score against the Bombers last year, round 3, 128. Yeah. So I like that pick. I think Bergman is also a point of difference if you're chasing the matchup. It's just one that I'm probably not as confident in as a Jace Burgoyne, and I don't know how I'd feel going with like 2 Port in the back line in that matchup, even though it is the best one. It's just my spider sense is going off when it comes to that. That's all. But I think you could definitely be looking at one of those. Might come down to the cards you possess as well. So Jace Burgoyne should be really good. A Lawson Humphreys, I'm not sure on. Again, the matchup says yes. And I believe he had a good score last week there too, against the Kangaroos. So where was he? Yeah, 115 points last week, and he kicked a goal in that too, which is good. But he's one that I've really liked this season. I picked him up in a few, like in a keeper league as well that we're playing, mate, and he's been very good for me there, Lawson. But this one here, if you're chasing a matchup, the Richmond Tigers are the third best matchup for the season, as we've spoken about at times there. And they're the fourth best fourth best matchup in the past 5 weeks there. The one there, I guess, like if we're looking at recent form as well, like I'll pull up what he's done against the Richmond Tigers there, but you could look at a Lawson Humphreys. How would you split maybe a Humphreys and a Tom Stewart? Like if you want to look at that Richmond matchup, I know, like maybe I'm burned by a Tom Stewart. We went there earlier this season, but I can't pick him for that reason. Like I've picked him in a good matchup. I think they played the Doggies there from memory, and he just let me down. So I don't know how I'd feel going, that way, like a Tom Stewart, but I feel like a Lawson Humphreys will push higher up the ground and get involved.
I just don't think Tom Stewart has the ceiling this year. I know Humphreys only really has the one big ceiling score. He got 151. I think it was against the Swans. But other than that, Stewart's highest score is 136. The last 4 weeks, he's gone 87, 96, 110, and 110. And there were 3 really good matchups against Kangaroos, Bombers, Magpies, and Demons. So, 4 really good matchups for defenders. So, I think even though the Tigers are probably next level in terms of matchup easy, like strength and being super easy, but I think I'm probably still Humphreys over a Stewart for that exact reason. I think Stewart's burned me in the past. I think he's burned a lot of coaches in the past, and for some reason he continues to be popular. I think you'd be chasing the upside of Humphreys, obviously that rebounding halfback player over more of a key positional player. Humphreys gets the kick-ins, so I think it'd be him over Stewart. In terms of playing a Humphreys, I'm not quite sure. I'm with you there. I'm not sure he could sneak into my side. I think there is just quite a few good options this week. Probably more reliable players.
I agree.
Similar matchups or decent matchups that I think will probably be more consistent.
So let's talk about some of those other options there. We've got 2 down the bottom, Jarman Impey and an Archie Roberts. The Jarman Impey one is interesting because it's not one that I really want to go and pick when they're playing over in the West against the West Coast. But I reckon, just sort of gut feel, like if I'm having a look at that data, I reckon that West Coast matchup in the last couple of weeks has been leaking bulk points to opposition kickers. And it was obviously Ash and Witt last week, but it's been a Josh Dacos, for example. Like they have just really... I don't know, they kind of gone away from that Milan Murdoch tag that we've spoken about so much this year. So they're actually the 3rd best matchup for defenders in the past 3 weeks, which is about the time where I reckon I've noticed that sort of change in difficulty for those defenders. And then I'm keen to actually see what that looks like in terms of the DVP as well in the last 5. So West Coast, they're still not great actually in the last 5, sorting by designated kickers. But again, it's the last 5 games too. So I feel like the last 3 is maybe a bit more representative of what we might see. How concerned would you be about that Milan Murdoch tag? We didn't see it against Josh Dacos. We haven't seen it against Witt. You probably can't roll into this, or like you probably can't fade him for that reason alone. What are your thoughts on
I just don't see them doing it. I was super confident they were going to do it against Josh Dacos. Didn't happen. Cost me my spot in Sundays in the FantasyBros Sunday Showdown. I thought they'd potentially do it last week against Whitfield, knowing that they've had success previously doing that. And once again, it didn't eventuate. So I find it hard to see Impey getting attention. I think it's the last match of the season. I think Hawthorn will come over there. They'll be super strong. They'll want to kind of turn around their recent run of form. And I think Impey could be a key driver to that. He's one that is probably... He's just on the outside of my team at the moment, but if anything happens at Team List News on Thursday afternoon, he's probably the one that comes straight in, because I just think that he does have the ceiling, as we all know. He went 170 166, 165 in back-to-back weeks in positive matchups. And as you just mentioned, West Coast is an extremely positive matchup over the last 3 weeks. So he's one to definitely consider for sure. Looking at the kick-ins, we've mentioned it for weeks now. The Hawks don't really have a key person that does all the kick-ins. They like to spread the load. He had what's that? He actually had 2 kick-ins last week behind Blake Hardwick, who had 4, and Carl Amon, who had 3. So he's just there. He scores well. 113 last week.
Yeah. And he was on a big score at half
He
time
did
too,
slow
so he
down.
really sort of slowed down in that second
Yeah.
half. But yeah, it's just probably that Brisbane game that has us like worried and spooked, I reckon. But yeah, like he should be good again. The only thing I would flag is that the last 2 against West Coast haven't been great. So 69 and 101 in his last 2. So that's probably solidifying why he's just on the outer for us. And it's not as sort of as juicy as some of the other picks we've got. So where would an Archie Roberts sit in terms of those matchups there? Like I'm kind of keen on this one, but a bit like Impey's just on the outside.
I would have Impey ahead of Roberts. I think Roberts has had 1 good score in probably the last 6 weeks of footy. He just doesn't have that role that he had at the start of the season. So yeah, last week, 129 points against the Swans was his highest score since round 11 when he scored 129 against the Tigers. So yeah, Porter, a good matchup, leaking points at the moment, as we kind of mentioned with Bowie last week. But the consistency is not there. His mark numbers are actually way down. He's not getting as much of the ball.
What did he have last week?
He had 7 marks last week, which was his highest since round 11 against the Tigers. So it's just one that you're probably chasing last week's points based on his recent form. Like before that, 86, 89, 90, 107, 89, 55. So he's definitely in my under 22 side. I just don't know if I could go there in a standard competition.
Yeah, that is fair. In terms of that ladder positioning as well, this is one of those interesting games where it's not actually going to affect anything. So how much do you read into what that might do for an Archie as well? But yeah, you're right. They haven't really looked to use him the way that they did to start the year. So yeah, probably why he's on the outer. But again, let's see what happens with teams as
So
well.
he had 4 kick-ins last week alongside Zach Reid. So obviously he is still their designated kicker down there. It's just whether or not you want to chase, I guess, the matchup and the consistency. If I look at his kick-in numbers since round 18 against the Lions, he's gone 7 kick-ins, 4 kick-ins, 4 kick-ins, 4 kick-ins, 4 kick-ins, and 4 kick-ins. So you know it's going to be consistent.
Yeah, okay. That's an interesting one to ponder. Any concluding thoughts there on the defenders?
Let's move on.
All righty, let's have a look at our midfielders. Kick us off. What do we got?
So obviously plug and plays, they haven't changed since last week. Nick Dacos, Dawson, Bailey Smith, Will Ashcroft, and Errol Goulden. And then our 3 options for round 24, we've got Zach Merritt. Was actually 4 options. Zach Merritt, the 2 Suns boys in Noah Anderson, Matt Rao, and then Marcus Bontempelli. But if I would say there's an asterisk next to that one. 2 points of difference. Tanner Bruin, Ola Dempsey, Jack Steele is also a point of difference. And then as one that we've kind of mentioned already earlier in the show, as your scar mate, it's Lockie Neal. We're not keen on him this week. Is there anyone that you want to start with?
I'm keen to start at Zach Merritt, but it was interesting that you said around Bontempelli with the asterisk around him because he may or may not be there. But I just remembered too, on our defender slide, we had Nick Blakey there as our Sunday superstar with an asterisk next to him for a very similar reason. Obviously, with the situation there at Sydney, we're not sure what's going to happen with a few of those players there in terms of the footy. So keep an eye on that. And he was sitting in here as an option against North Melbourne, who are a positive matchup. So yeah, he's one that there's just a lot of question marks around now that we probably can't talk about too much at the moment. But he was one I thought I would mention. But yeah, it talked me through a Zach Merritt because this Port Adelaide matchup under the lid, Zach Merritt, our midfield's depleted. You can see we're really scraping some interesting options there in our points of difference with a Tanner Brew and Ollie Dempsey, Jack Steele. So can I be picking a Zach Merritt this week? That's my question.
100%. I think you can. Limited options this week, limited decent matchups for midfielders. if you look at his recent form, you probably suggest that maybe he isn't. Last 4 games, he's gone 80, 113, 103, 105. He's also got a 41 against Lions in round 18 in there as well. But I just think that this could be the game that he pops off. Port are the 4th easiest matchup for the season. They're the 5th easiest matchup over the last 5 weeks. He scored 120 GDS points in round 2 earlier this season. Before that, he has scores of 121 and 158 for a 3-game average of 133 GDS points against Port. They're the 3rd best matchup of his career. If I'm just looking at some of his CBAs as well, I think they've also come up over the last couple of weeks. He's back in that centre bounce mix.
Yeah, 68% last week against the Swans.
68%. So what's that? That's number 3. No, number 2.
Yeah, third mid there. Like you had Brian and Visentini there in the ruck, so kind of take them out, and then you're looking at it was even Lucky Blackiston. Gee, that's interesting, isn't it? You got Brian on 61%. Setterfield, sorry, was the main mid there. Apologies. So Will Setterfield was the one who had the most, 84%. Lockie Blackiston as the ruck, but that's interesting. Brian, Visentini, and Blackiston.
That's Caldwell. You're reading the wrong column. Jai Caldwell, 61%.
Oh, how did that get mixed up? Oh, okay, yeah, he was right underneath. I was going to say that wouldn't have made sense having the 3 roll through.
Blackie didn't play last week, so they did play the double rucks. But yeah, I guess in terms of merit, I think the most important thing is he's back in that midfield mix. Obviously, he dropped off in the middle of the season. He went 4%, 33%, and 21% from round 16 to 18. But over the last couple of weeks, he's gone 59%, 82%, 81, 81, and 68%. So he's back in the midfield mix. I think that's where we want him. That's where he scores his best. We know that's the merit that we like. The thing that I also kind of think about as well, this could potentially be a swan song game for him at the Bombers. Like I know there's all these rumors around, does he go around again at the Bombers next year? Does he kind of look for that trade to Hawthorn in the offseason? Obviously, we know the Bombers aren't playing finals. So is this potentially his last game for the Bombers? And if so, I think he's going to try and put his best foot forward. He's going to want to leave on a good note. I think he's not going to get any attention from Port because we kind of mentioned earlier, it's a game that has no meaning to the season. So they're not going to tag anyone. So I just think he's a good shout this week.
You may be talking me into him there. I think I could go. So can I say something maybe a bit crazy? Could there be an upset on the cards?
Yeah.
Could the Bombers get a win?
I definitely think so. Now that Horn Francis is out of the side, I'm not sure if Alir's been cleared. I know he got concussed last week, so that's potentially another out as well. So there's 2 big outs. Obviously, Butters is already out of the side. So, yeah, the Bombers could end the season on a high, but at the same time, do they want to? Because they've got the number 1 pick sewn up, haven't they? Or is that the Tigers?
Oh, actually, I'm not even too sure about that. I'd have to go and double check. No, yeah, if they win, and you'd imagine Richmond lose, right, down there, they could jump. They probably would jump if they win.
Yeah, so it's probably a game they don't want to win, right? Like, you probably want
for that
the number 1 pick.
Yeah, but they're not going to take.
No,
surely.
well, you wouldn't think so.
They're beyond the days of that. Unless Richmond win.
Yeah, look, I don't see that happening, but
that can't happen. Not down at
but interesting point you raised. Like, if the Bombers do really want to rock up and play, I think they could sneak a win, and it obviously Merit's going to be at the forefront of that if that's going to happen. So, yeah, look, I think in a week where, once again, it's not many good matchups, I think he's probably got one of the better matchups, and we know he's got a ceiling on his day. He does like to tackle. He gets all those cheap marks sometimes when he's not getting tagged. I think I'm just going to back in the player that it is and, hope for the best.
He doesn't have 2 bad games in a row. He had an 81 in round 3, followed up with a 141. Had a 73 in round 7, followed it up with a 128. Had a 41 in round 18 and followed it up with 146. And he had an 80 last week, and he follows it up with 180.
180.
We'll see. You're right. It's the player. Hey, it's the matchup. I like that. So I'll have him in my midfield now, I reckon. And yeah, obviously Hornbag comes out because he was sitting there prior to that. And I was just having a look too. I feel like I pulled it up there in terms of what he has scored against. Oh no, I think you said that
Yeah,
as well. What he scored against them was quite good.
yeah.
Yeah.
3-game average of
Nah, all right.
133.
Okay, but I'm not sure about the Suns, boys.
Yeah, and look,
You like 'em?
neither am I. I do have one that's ahead of the other, and I think a lot of people would probably think it's Matt Rowell who's ahead of Noah Anderson, but I actually have Noah Anderson ahead of Matt Rowell this week. And this comes back to the point I kind of raised about John Noble earlier. I think the game style is actually going to suit Noah Anderson more than it is Matt Rowell. Obviously, we saw against GWS, Matt Rowell scored that 212, which was an absolutely insane game. Had 40 touches, 16 tackles, but it was the weather that kind of allowed him to do that. He likes the contested footy. He likes it at the contest. Last week against the Lions, didn't really eventuate that way. He only scored just over 100, 107 points. This week,
Looked better. Looked better than
yeah,
that.
and that's right. Like it probably did look better. He gets a lot of clearance.
At least the first
He
half.
gets a lot of clearances. He gets a lot of the footy, but then it's like, what's he doing in transition? What's he doing in the uncontested game? His numbers, his mark numbers, is what is concerning for me. And obviously, I kind of mentioned the way I see this game going. It's going to be high uncontested marks, chip footy, who can hold onto the ball the longest. So if that's the case, I just don't see him really getting involved a whole lot. And I also think he potentially, once again, the game doesn't mean anything, but Ross the boss just throws in spinners every single week. I think a Windy or a Box will go to Matt Rowell. And it probably does allow Noah Anderson to roam just a little bit more and kind of get involved in that mark game. So if we're looking at
Do you reckon that's a game? Oh yeah, I guess they want to. Hey,
St Kilda will want to win.
but I don't think they can. Like they can't jump
No,
in
they
anyway.
can't. It's a dead rubber, but
Yeah,
I think they'll want to end the season on a high. And obviously this
Ross likes doing that
and the
stuff
Suns will
too.
want to too, like obviously after the tough year that they've had. But Matt Rowell, he's only for the season, he's had a season high mark game of 6 marks in a game. He's only averaging 2.3 marks a game compared to 6.8 tackles. So I just don't really see it being that contested tackle heavy game where he's going to rely on these big tackle numbers to boost his scoring. His last two against the Saints, 144 and 85 GDS points. The Saints are a neutral matchup for the season when it comes to midfielders. They're the 9th easiest, but the 4th easiest over the last 5 weeks. And that's probably why I'm a little bit keen on a Noah Anderson, because Noah Anderson earlier in the season, 138 against the Saints in round 9. Before that, 141 and 117 for a 3-game average of 132 GDS points. They're the 4th best matchup of his career. And if the game kind of pans out that uncontested style of gameplay, Noah Anderson's the one that has the higher mark involvement at the Suns. Season high of 10 marks in a game. He's got another game of 9. He's averaging 5 marks a game for the season alongside 3.7 tackles. So he's not relying on the tackles. He's the skipper of the side. I think the Suns want to finish the season on a high note. Does he kind of just go lead from the front? I'm going to have one of my best games of the season. I'm going to finish on a strong point. So yeah, that's probably why I'm more keen on Noah Anderson. Do I currently have him sitting in my side? Not at the moment, but I'm tempted.
So if I have my red Nando, should I put him in challenger?
I think you have to this week.
Go off, end the season with a bang.
I think you have to.
All right. I do like your points, and I do actually probably agree now with you. I like that call around a Noah Anderson.
Sorry,
a Bontempelli's probably.
But even like just on a Noah Anderson, like just recently, you wouldn't say he's setting the world on fire. 104 last week.
He's been consistent though.
Only 3 points behind Matt Rowell. Week before 126. Week before that 102, 129. Like still consistent scores, but there's the potential for the upside. Obviously, he's hit 170, 153 this season. So yeah, I just don't mind it.
Yeah, well, I don't mind the shout either. So, looking ahead to a Bontempelli, he's probably one we're going to keep an eye on. look, I know you've got something there about a refreshed Bont as well, but just keep an eye on it because he was managed last week. And I know Bevo came out and said that they're not going to play him if he's not 100%. They're going to save him for next week in that final. So I think that that'd almost be silly to sort of bring him out this week when they can really have him right for next week. But obviously, we don't know what Bevo's going to do. I think he said that morning last week that no one's going to get managed. Like they're all going to go ahead. And that night, Bontempelli out managed. So we wait and see. We're at the mercy of coaches and teams. And
the funny thing there is I saw the same thing about Bevo. You know, they want Bontempelli to rest, but the Bont wants to play. So they're going to have to try and talk him out. They're going to try and talk him out of not playing. And he said it's going to be a very difficult task to try and, you know, change his mind because the Bont obviously wants to be out there. They didn't quite get the win last week. They're still playing for, you know, potentially a home wild card game. So I think if, you know, obviously I understand if he's got something niggly and he's not 100%, but even if he's 90%, I think he probably still plays. Just having a look at the ladder. So, yeah, if results go their way, they could jump Collingwood. Like if Brisbane should beat Collingwood, the Bulldogs beat Melbourne, they could jump them and get a home qualifying wildcard final at Marvel instead of having to travel to the G. So I think that's potentially what the Dogs are out there playing for. So
what about an Ed Richards then?
Well,
like even if a Bont maybe doesn't get up, because I'd almost prefer an Ed over a Bont, particularly seeing what he did without him last week.
So and this is what I looked into Bont. So obviously the couple flags are that he could get rested again quite easily. And the other one could be if he does play, he could get attention from Joel Fitzgerald, who we know he's been doing a bit of run with role recently for the Ds. If Bont was to get ruled out, I think Richards becomes a good play, a good shout, but then he's also potentially the number one target for Fitzgerald to kind of run with him and do a job. So maybe it's if Bont's in, maybe Richards could be a guy that, you know, plays second fiddle, doesn't get attention, and then potentially could score well as a result. He was great last week with Bont out of the side. If we're just looking at the Ds, though, and the Ds matchup, they are the 7th hardest matchup for the season and the 9th hardest over the last 5 weeks. So the matchup's not necessarily there. I just more am kind of tempted by the factor that the Bont's had a week off. He could be coming out to a point to prove. He scored 122 GDS points against the Ds in round 11 early in the season. Before that, scores of 139, 157, and 106 for a 4-game average of 131. So that entices me. But Richards could also be a very good play.
Yeah, I'm finding it difficult to pick this week, that's for sure. So points of difference then. I don't mind one of the Cats. I think it might be an Ollie Dempsey potentially over a Tanner Bruin, but I have liked Tanner Bruin. He's been my primetime pod so many times this year where I've just played him because I've got his plat, put it in primetime, and he gets me a good score. He had 126 GDS points last week. Out of 28 touches, he had 20 kicks, 8 marks, and a tackle, playing predominantly behind the ball with only 5% CBAs. So he's got a season high of 138 points, and he's passed 100, 12 times. So the only flag is he does have a season low of 50. We know there's a floor score there. He's not a player we pick in our midfield for this reason. He's not one of those big dogs. However, against Tigers in 2024, the last time he played them, he had 119 GDS points. We know what that Richmond matchup is like. He could be an option. But then Ollie Dempsey had 123 GDS points last week. He's got a season high of 142. And I think the reason why I like maybe an Ollie Dempsey more is his ability to hit the scoreboard. So, yes, we've got Bruin behind the ball, but the way Ollie Dempsey covers the wing, it's one of the best in the game, if not the best. So that's the one that really gets me interested. His last 3 against the Tigers aren't amazing. It's 73, 68, 127. But I just feel like this week, the matchup against the Tigers down at the Cattery, it's a different ballpark altogether. And I think we almost have to be looking at a few Cats. If we're not looking at Max Home because he's injured, we're obviously locking in a Bailey Smith. Well, where else do we go? Yes, we've got those 2 forwards we'll talk about later on. But I think we also need to really genuinely give a mention to Ollie Dempsey.
Yeah, look, these are probably your pods, right? Like, obviously, that's what the points of difference. They're boom or bust type players. They could easily put up a very floor score that kind of hurts you, ruins your week. But then they could also, Ollie Dempsey could kick 4 or 5 goals from the wing, have 20 odd disposals, couple marks, like he did against the Pies in round 21, and kind of, you sit him in the midfield and go like, yep, nailed that pick. Could I do it? No, I don't think I could. And that's the same for a Jack Steele this week. I think their points are difference with high upside potentially, but am I potentially going to risk playing someone like this over, someone like a Noah Anderson or Matt Rao, who I know I'm potentially going to get from?
Or an Ed Richards.
Or even an Ed Richards. That's exactly right. They might have the highest ceiling potentially in the matchup, but the floor is what scares me. And where I currently am in my seasonal ranks, I don't really want to slide. So looking to play a little bit safe and look for the upside.
Because they will be very unique.
Oh, 100%. They'd be under probably 2% played across all standard competitions, I reckon.
Yeah, and that 2% probably prime time most weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they're a good shout anyway. So talk me through a Jack Steele, because I don't know if I can go back there.
Well, that's the thing. Like I just said, I don't think I can either. It's just more the fact that he found a little bit of form last week, 123 GDS points against the Power, thanks to 27 disposals, 3 marks, 7 tackles, and a goal. It's only his second score over 120 since round 5. And that obviously, earlier in the season, he was nearly a plug and play in our midfield. And then all of a sudden, he just dropped right off the face of the cliff. But interesting, though, he's still in the market share of the CBAs alongside Cozzy and Tom Sparrow. Steele and Cozzy had 78% last week to be the equal number 1 bananas, while Sparrow had 63%. However, he comes up against a dog side who are leaking points currently. The Dogs are the 3rd easiest matchup for the season and the easiest matchup over the last 5 weeks for opposition midfielders. He scored 101 GDS points earlier in round 11 this season. Before that, 118 and 70 while playing for the Saints. And once again, why he kind of falls into this pod category, he has dropped a score of 49 GDS points just 2 weeks ago. So I think you are picking at your own risk. If you like the matchup, if you want someone who's potentially got the role, could score well, then maybe Jack Steele's your guy. I just don't think I can go there personally.
Yeah, that Dogs matchup is so interesting, isn't it? In terms of the matchup for midfielders, even sorting by inside mids, they're really positive. So could be worth a shout. It also makes me like those 2 midfield forwards we have to talk about later on as well, particularly after they probably weren't, lighting it up for us last week, but we will get to those. And the avoid Lachie Neale. I mean, you do think that he probably does bounce back, but you're right. He was Touk Miller did go to him last week, held him to 57 GDS points. I thought it was 59.
Yeah, I got that wrong.
No, I remember 59 because I was like, he and she's had the same thing, and I have to have one of them. So, but he now comes into a tag against Ed Allen, and I know you talked to me last week. You said, Will Ashcroft gets the tag. I think it's Lachie Neale. I think it has to be Lachie Neale, just given the fact that he's shown he's susceptible at times to a tag. He's been probably our best clearance player all year. And I know Will Ashcroft is good, but I still feel like it's Lachie Neale, and teams have to go to him at the moment. So surely he does. And again, it's one of those conversations around, well, if it's likely to happen and you've seen what they can do when they do competition, then it's probably just one I don't want any part in. And Ed Allen, mate, he's been in great form just quietly as a tagger. He's held Will Day to 60, Harley Reid to 96, Baz to 94, Dawson to 116, but he did most of that work in the first half, and then he went to them in the second half and kept him really quiet. So that's probably not super reflective of what he actually did. And then Lachie Neale, I know you got some data there. You want to talk through what he's done so far this season when getting a tag?
Yeah, so there's a couple of games that I've actually been to as well and kind of, looked to play him in the matchup. And out of nowhere, like last week, the Suns just threw a tag at him, not expected. Drops to 59 against the Cats. Obviously, played them twice this year. Oisin Mullen went to him in the first half of their game in round 17. I think 26. It was 26 at halftime. Yeah, he ended up on 104. But even still,
they freed them.
Dockers in round 12, Matt Johnson went to him, 78. Cats in round 11 when Oisin Mullen went to him, 101. And then in Saints in round 3, I think Windy went to him that day from memory, and he scored 71. So it's just every time he looks to get attention, he just looks like he's disinterested. He doesn't want to power through. You know what he's like when he doesn't have attention. He's super hungry to get those little cheap 45-degree kicks and like rack up the points that way, just like he did against the Hawks. But then as soon as he gets a little bit of pressure, he just looks like, oh, okay, I'm just going to take my player out of the game. But yeah, look, I just don't think I can with the potential of the tag potentially going your way. And I think you're right. I did think it was Will Ashcroft at first, but now that Neil's shown this pattern, especially this season, to be susceptible to a tag, I just think it's hard not for a team to put the tag there on him.
Especially when he's so damaging, like
Yeah.
out of that middle of the ground, and he can rack up so much of the footy. That's the one. You know what he can do to you, but you know that he's gettable. You go for him. You go, okay, we'll get him. Will Ashcroft, I feel like he'd be much harder to tag.
Yeah.
Particularly when he's not always starting in the CBA. He'll sort of start half forward and roll up. He'll go through the CBAs, just gets around the ground. He works so hard deep in defence, but then also can push forward and just find ways to hit the scoreboard. And we saw what he did in that really short period of time at the end of the second quarter against Carlton. He can just sort of find a way to score rapid. So, yeah, it's one that I don't love a Lockie Neal for, mate. And I think it's a pretty good shout.
Yeah, 75% CBAs last week for him. So he'll still be in the middle, but I think, yeah, his potential ceiling is limited with the potential tag coming his way. And I think another reason
Yeah, good
I just
call.
can't nail the Lions at the moment. I don't want to play with
Yep.
trying to pick a second line
Yep.
again. I think I'm just going to go Will Ashcroft and that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Save it for finals. You know, I just think spread the love this week with the different matchups we've got. So, yeah, I'm completely with you. That's probably one thing I've realised this year as well. Actually, you know, it's another lesson I think I've learned this year. We'll have to do it. We'll have to write down all the lessons we've learned this year. One lesson I've learned this year is don't just pick a Lion because you're going to go watch them at the Gabba. That's one. That's one I have learned.
That is very true. There's a couple that have definitely gone the other way.
Yeah, it's just so good when you do have them in your side and you see them go 150.
Do you remember that day when we played the Crows and we had, I think, four of them go off and like, you beauty, but it hasn't been that way since.
Nah, yeah, but we keep going back there. All right, so Rucks, who have we got? Talk us through the Rucks. We've got Gawn clearly as number one. Hey, that Western Bulldogs matchup, that's pretty good. There's no Tim English as well, so he is the clear number one. They're the fourth best matchup of the season for Rucks, the Dogs. Seventh easiest over the last 5 weeks. Obviously, Rory Lobb, is going to be the number one Ruck. Big Maxi had 110 on them earlier this season in round 11, but before that, he's had scores of 135, 151, 154. Gorney is the number one. He's the GOAT. He's been the best this year. I can't believe he's nearly 35 years old and he's doing what he is. So he's the number one. My question is, where do we go after that?
Yeah, and this is where I'm kind of confused this week. I honestly don't know. And I think, once again, it probably come down to team list. Brodie Grundy is currently sharing with Will Green. Luke Jackson, Freo can't move from the top of the ladder. Do they just go, we'll give him a freshen up before finals? But then he's going to get 2 weeks off in a row. So then maybe it doesn't happen that way. Maybe he gets a bit of an in-game rest. Obviously, Grundy coming up against Sherry coming up against Grundy, sharing the role as well. So I just don't really love many options. I think you're right. I think Gawn is the clear number one. Outside of that, though, at the moment, I'm probably looking to target a Luke Jackson, but that's not with any confidence at all. And that's just purely based on his consistency in the last 4 games. 130, 116, 114, and 119. And he faces the Blues this week, who are the 7th easiest matchup for the season. However, more recently, they are the hardest matchup over the last 5 weeks, which is a little bit off-putting. But what is in Luke Jackson's favour, though, is the recent history in the matchup. Scored 148 GDS points in round 7 earlier in the season. Before that, he had scores of 125 and 101. So I think that's potentially enough for me to have him at number 2.
Yep, that's fair.
And then from there, I think Grundy's probably your number 3. Last 4 against North for him, 61, which is earlier in the season, 146, 98, and 125 for a 4-game average of 107.5. However, they are the third worst matchup of his career, and North are slightly negative for the season, the ninth hardest, but they're more neutral over the last 5 weeks, the ninth easiest. So I don't love it, but I don't hate it either.
The only thing with Carlton, right? I know. So yeah, I don't love Cherry, by the way, either against Brodie Grundy. I just think Cherry's shown us this year that we can't. Yeah, he hasn't been one we can really reliably go to. Even last week in that matchup, I know he might have been stuck on the bench for a bit in that last quarter, but a 120 in that sort of matchup, like you take that. But I wouldn't have any confidence picking him again this week. That Carlton matchup where you said they're the hardest in the past 5 weeks. Rucks in the past 5 weeks. Louis Emmett for the Bulldogs last week. It's got 8 points in Stats Lab. So I don't know what happened there. I didn't see the game, but that's 24 points below his average. Rowan Marshall had 99 points sharing with TDK in round 22, and TDK had a 44 in that one. So that would have been the game. Did he get? He hurt his ribs in that one, I think, from memory. So that was 32 points below his average. And then you always had Darcy Fort the week before that with a 66, Ned Moyle before that with a 46. So they're not really big rucks, right? You go back to round 19, Darcy Cameron 120. Okay. So I think that matchup, we might consider that. And I think I'm probably Jackson as well now. Just if we're not super keen, we know what he does around the ground. He's probably going to get managed in game. You just said it there before. I think they'd be silly. They wouldn't not play him to have that 2 weeks off. I think that's too much. I think they will just reduce his load in this game. They might sit him forward of the ball a little bit more. They might try and maybe have some time off. But I also think that Carlton will be in this. They're not going to come out here and take it easy. Like, they're going to bring it right up to Freo, and they're going to want to have a red-hot crack. And I just kind of, I'd be surprised if they really rest him significantly. So I think I'm pretty happy with an LJ. As happy as I can be, given a week.
I think I agree. Then obviously our void is Darcy Cameron. Last week we had him as someone that we weren't as keen on. We didn't say avoid. Scored 105 GDS points in that tough Hawks matchup. Faces the Lions this week, who are the hardest matchup for the season and the ninth hardest over the last 5 weeks. His previous scores against the Lions, 57 earlier this year. I know he wasn't in form earlier in the season, but I'm just still not looking to target. Before that, 120, 99, 91, 119, and 38. And they are the third worst matchup for his career to date. So just one not to target this week in the matchup. And then on screen there, you can see we've got an ultimate point of difference. Any under 22s coaches out there would be absolutely loving their sides with Big Vigo in their side. Obviously, I know you talked about it last week. He helped you to a win in under 22s last week.
Thank you, Vigo.
But then, he went even bigger. Week just gone, 141 GDS points against the Ruck Pig and Will Green last week in just his 4th AFL game and 2nd for the season. Interesting, though, he only had 38% CBAs and 40% Ruck contests. The week before, he had 88% and 67% ruck contest. So that's dropped significantly. And Nick Bryan was the number 1 ruck last week. He's averaging 125 GDS points across those 2 games, thanks to 18 disposals, 6.5 marks, 23.5 hit-outs, and 4 tackles. However, the major flag, though, is he is coming into a tricky matchup, a negative matchup. Faces Port this week, who are the 4th hardest matchup for the season and the 2nd hardest over the last 5 weeks. So if you like the big look of Big Vigo in your 22 side and you think, why not have a go, throw in a bit of a pod, I think he could be a good solid pick this week, but don't expect 140.
Yeah, don't mind that at all. Happy to move on to the forwards. Alrighty, let's have a look. We have our plug and plays here. Obviously, Cozzy, Brad Hill, Tom Sparrow, Isaac Rankin. I think they're all walk-up picks this week, as usual. Plug and plays for a reason. Harry Sheasel is obviously injured, to note that. He obviously had that hit to the face, unfortunately. I think it's maybe cheekbone, I think, from memory. But, it didn't look good. Or, sorry, eye socket maybe.
Cheekbone.
Cheekbone. He did not look good at all, unfortunately. So it's a shame. It looks like his season's done too. I think there's no way he'll play this week. So it's a shame to see he's been such a good player the whole season, as he always is, and he's going to go high in that prize card draft, as he will probably for the next 10 years or so. But look at those options there on screen. We have Zach Bailey, Max Hall, Tim Kelly. Think we can throw a few darts here in the forward line as well. I think probably you've got 1, 2, 3. So you've got 4 plug and plays. Bailey's probably a 5th. Hall's probably a 6th. I think 6 I'm really happy with. It's the 7th. It's like, where do I go? I really like a Sean Manor. Tim Kelly's probably the option because he's been more consistent and reliable across the course of the season. I'm not sure how big he can go against the Hawks, even over in the West. So I do question his ceiling a little bit, particularly in this one. He's probably the safer play, and maybe it's not a week for a safer play. Maybe it's a week to go, hey, that last one, if I'm going to play those 6 defenders, this is where I'm going to really throw a dart there. So you could look at a Sean Manor against the Tigers, and you could look at a Joe Richards against the Bombers. Do you want to chat about a Tim Kelly at all there, mate? Or do you want to go straight into our points of difference?
Let's go into probably the points of difference, the Cats boys. Obviously, we've got one as a point of difference and one as an avoid. Or what's the reasoning behind that this week?
Yeah, so I have a rule in my side, mate. All my players must have 2 functioning ACLs. So unfortunately, Brian has 1.5, and he misses the cut because of that, and there's just nothing I can do about it, unfortunately.
So is that a new rule after his 37 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. Yep. If somebody said to me, Pity, he's going to go 120, I'd be like, oh, I'm not picking him. I don't care. That's a rule. I'm sorry. You give me a 30 against the Bombers, and I'm not touching you, even against the Tigers. Next year, Grind, I love you. You're one of my favourite players when you are, in terms of a forward as well. Like he is really good to watch. He just hasn't had a great season. Been very unlucky with injury. It's very unfortunate. I know we're tongue in cheek here, chatting about him, but I really do hope he gets back to full fitness next year because he's such a good player. So it's a shame. I cannot be picking him with any confidence after he dished up what he did the other week. I only have 1 spot I'm looking to fill in my forward line. So it just means that I like a Joe Richards more. I like a Sean Manor more. I even like a Tim Kelly more, to be honest, and the matchup's maybe not there for him either. So, yeah, that's kind of where I sit on a Brian Myers. It's just hard to pick after that Essendon performance. But speaking of a Sean Manor, he's the one that we're probably looking at, isn't he?
I think so for the matchup. Obviously, we got the decision wrong 2 weeks ago. Even last week, he was good again. I think he get 3 goals last week.
Been pretty consistent.
Yeah, was it 122? 122?
122. 97 before that, 84, 95. Obviously the 51 versus the Saints. But then he shows that ceiling. Just every now and then he'll pop this score, and it'll be off the back of a pretty high goal count. So he had round 10, he had 160 against the Lions up here at the Gabba thanks to 5 goals. Round 18 against the Giants, he had a 157 thanks to 4 goals. And I know Bales mentioned this as well, which is why he was keen on him, as a lot of coaches were against the Bombers 2 weeks ago. Just with that possibility, he only got the 1 snag for a 97, but you just feel like he's the one that likes to beat down on these sort of teams. And Richmond at the Cattery, I passed up a 97 2 weeks ago, but I'm pretty keen to jump on this one.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it could be a game that he gets 3-4 goals quite easily, 20 odd touches, couple marks. You know, that's just points are just adding up for him if that's the case. So,
do you want to know his last 2 against the Tigers?
Hit me with it.
90 and 99.
Okay, so he'll be consistent. He'll be reliable with the potential of the upside there. So I think in a week where, you know, we've talked about it, coaches might be chasing points. They might be looking to make some ground on different opposition. I think Matt is definitely your guy. He can pop a 160, but it also would surprise me to see him maybe pop under an 80 as well, regardless of the matchup, just based on his inconsistencies and potentially being goal reliant. So the other point of difference next to him is interesting because obviously we kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, coming back into the side last week and being the number 1 banana for the Port Power. Joe Richards shapes as an interesting decision, I think, for me, and I think obviously for you as well. I think what he scored 120 GDS points last week, was it?
Yeah, 120. And then before that, before he got injured again, he had 158 against the Dockers. And it's thanks to that role in the midfield with really high CBAs. Like, yes, it was 81% last week against Melbourne. It was only 45% against the Dockers, and he still managed that score. One thing I do like about a Joe Richards too is that he's a footballer. Like he knows how to find the footy, and he gets in such good spots. And you just feel against a team like Essendon, that's something he's going to be able to do, particularly in this last game of the season. Players like a Joe Richards, players like a Jace Burgoyne, they're going to be actually
Yeah.
playing for something. They want that midfield role. They want to actually, sort of impress the coach as well to show, hey, you're in our plans moving forward as a team. So I have confidence that they'll have pretty high time on ground. They'll want to put their best foot forward. Richards will be in the CBAs. You can guarantee that more than Jace Burgoyne, but I feel like Jace Burgoyne's still going to be good. And probably, again, we had question marks over Miles Bergman. So I really like a Jace Burgoyne. 119 earlier in the season against the Bombers as well. That was round 2. And in that one, he actually had 0% CBAs in that one. So he was just working around the ground. I think that this one, I would find it really hard to split a Manor and a Richards this week. It's the midfield role against the Bombers for a Joe Richards, and then it's just that possibility of just going absolutely like bananas against the Richmond for a Sean Manor.
Yeah, and maybe look, it's one that you could maybe play both.
Well, who would you pull out then? That means you're not playing a
Yeah,
Max Hall or a Zach Bailey or a Tom Sparrow,
and that's the thing.
because you can't fade Isaac Rankin.
And that's the thing. The plug and plays have really shown they deserve to be there with the upside they possess.
Sparrow and Pickett are walking into the
Oh,
best matchup for midfielders.
Yeah, and Brad Hill's just ridiculous. Bailey's got a good matchup against
Can't fade him.
Collingwood. Max Hall
has a midfield
have
role.
a midfield role against the Suns. So maybe you can't. But look, if you are, I'm not going to suggest maybe who it might be, because I actually don't know. But if you are liking the look of both the Manor and a Richards, I think you could do worse. Tim Kelly, I think he's just a consistent option recently based on his role. 115 GDS points last week, 97 I think the week before that. He's got the role in the midfield against the Hawks, and obviously we know the Hawks have had a couple decent scores scored against them recently. We saw Lockie Neal go, was it 160 something against them last week.
Tim Kelly doesn't quite play like that, but the matchup, it's still
it's
okay.
there. But I think if you're chasing the upside, I think it's a Manor, it's a Richards to go alongside a Bailey, a Hall. Obviously, Hall after last week, I think he's just going to be locked into people's sides if they've got the card, that is, and maybe that is potentially the reason why you go a Manor and a Richards. You might not have a bronze of Max Hall.
Yeah.
I know still people are chasing a bronze Tom Sparrow. So maybe that's your way into playing both of those guys and chasing that ceiling that way. But yeah, I think if you're picking one, I think I have Manor slightly ahead.
Yeah, I'm finding it quite tricky this week. That's one I'll be really tossing up, and maybe the answer is I just split them, but then I've got to figure out which one I'm putting in classic, which is the one I probably care about the most. So we'll have to see. They should both be good as well. We're probably splitting hairs here. We probably don't need to talk too much about Max Hall. I think we've already talked about him already just a little bit, but just giving him a bit of love, because last week was an incredible performance.
Yeah, unreal. Obviously, kind of spoke about him earlier as the star. Anytime you've got 40 disposals and kick a goal in a game, like we kind of mentioned even the week before against Carlton, he scored well in the trickiest matchup in the competition right now. So he's in a purple patch of form. I think you just got to play him if you've got him.
The matchup's probably not there compared to what he was last week. That might be the only flag. So it's not going to be the same score again, but it's probably more the role. And the one thing we've said about a Max Hall is that, I remember you said a couple of weeks ago, like we were talking about the matchup for the midfielders, and you're like, who's our avoid? Who can we avoid this week? We kind of looked around, and I know you floated, you were like, Maxi Hall? Like the matchup's not quite there. I can't remember who it was against. Carlton, I think it was. And I remember we were like, nah, you can't fade Max Hall. They're the matchups he loves as well. Like he likes it tough. That's the sort of player that he is. He loves doing the hard stuff. So even though it's not a great matchup this week, I think he'll still be great, especially in that forward line too with that midfield role. So,
but see, obviously, interesting point you raise. He does love the hard stuff. He loves the contested footy, but he also likes to spread from the contest,
which is a good mix.
Yeah, 100%. Like last week, 10 marks. Obviously, so if it is one of those uncontested games we've talked about already, then he's still going to find a way to get the footy. He'll still be involved in chain links and passage play.
Tackling.
And tackling when he can. So, and he also likes to hit the scoreboard as well. He does drift forward, kicks a goal or two. So I
Yep.
think you got to play him if you've got him. And Bailey, we've talked about him all season, is probably one of those unlucky ones to kind of not find his way into plug and plays. And now that Harry Cecil's injured, he probably could have come in as that fifth option. He's just reliable. You know what you're going to get. Probably safe 100, 110 every week. And that's potentially before he even kicks a goal. So, yeah, Zach Bailey should be good again against Collingwood.
I guess I found it hard sort of picking another solid option for the forward line this week, and probably another reason why we sort of kept him there as well. I know we floated the idea of Toby Green, and he's been in great form, but I'm not going to go pick him against Adelaide over in Adelaide. But I feel like there's a reason not to pick him almost every week now, and then he just continues to get it done. Like, he has a massive score against Freo. This is a while ago now. It was like 150 odd, but he just gets it done. So big shout out to Toby Green, but I'm just not picking a player who's going over to Adelaide playing as a forward.
No, completely understand, and I think there's a lot of better options this week, especially for the ceiling.
Yeah. All right. Happy to move on.
Yeah, let's do it. What are we, bro down, showdown?
Bro down, showdown. So you got the win, but I still have the lead 10-9. So
I'm coming.
Yeah, that was our primetime edition. So Rory Laird in the back line took out the win against Carl Warner. Caleb Sarong in the midfield took out the win against Sam Berry, who was very, very disappointing in what was a tough matchup, granted. Luke Nankervis unfortunately lost for you. I took out the win there in our utility with Isaac Cumming, or our pod, I should say. And then Josh Tracy for you also struggled there. Well, not struggled. He actually good game, 95. But Shea Bolton took the win with the 118. So 2 apiece, and then you had the highest score, mate. So congratulations, and congratulations also to anyone who picked Has and commented on them on screen. Maxi Hansen, Reese MB31, and Miyan G Gaming as well. So I'll spin this, and I've got a pack there, Has, which we're going to do now. I'll open a pack. You can pick 2 rows, and then you can give the additional row to Reese there on the screen. Well done, Reese. All right, let's pull up my tab. All right, so still happy to do that, mate? 2 rows?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. All right, we'll go. Let me reload. And we'll see what we can get ourselves. Again, yes, I am saving up. We have acknowledged that. All right, think about which row you want to give off to Reese there, mate, and which one you want to have. Oh, looks like there's going to be a plat in here. Let's hope this one can go to Reese. All right, which rows are you going to get? All column.
We'll go the middle row.
Middle row?
Yeah.
All right. Silver, and a gold. So we have Easton from the Suns, big Briggsy silver there in the middle, and then we have a Finn O'Sullivan gold. You take that.
Not bad for 22.
All right. Yeah, not bad at all, which means there's the plat. That's yours. Silver. All right. So Sid Draper, Brody Kemp, Riley Thilthorpe silver, handy. And the plat is, plat tie and printable. Good for the future. Hopefully 22s as well. Cooperoo. Yeah, Cooperoo boy as well. Big shout out there. Good friend of the pod, of course. So yeah, make sure again, Reese, just hit me up in Discord, mate. There, Finn O'Sullivan, Kieran Briggs, and Easton as well. They are yours.
He can also have the silver Riley Thilthorpe to go alongside that if you would like.
Oh, there you go. So put up something for all 4 of those there, Reese. And they are yours. And thanks again to everyone who does get involved with those Bro Down Showdowns too. We love it. And speaking of, here it is, our round 24. We are doing our round 24 standard edition. So it is going to be plug and plays only. So it's going to be Zorko in the back line for you against my Lockie Whitfield. Your Jordan Dawson against my Baz Lenka Smith against the Cats down at the Cattery. So you can chalk that up as a win there, mate, for me. In the utility spot, we have Ashcroft for you, Washy, against my Errol Goulden. And then in the forward line, your Isaac Rankin versus my Brad Hill. This is going to be a very big and close Bro Down.
Mate, I wouldn't go up and say Baz is a lock. We just saw Matt Rao go 212 against the Giants. So Dawson could be anything.
Yeah, that is very... Yeah. I just had a thought running through my head in terms of the cards I'm playing across each competition then. Knowing that, I was like, do I need to rethink what I'm doing? Yeah, that's big. But yeah, just load
Yeah.
up where you can, if possible,
No.
as well, because obviously it's not easy to come
Cracking,
across your Jordan Dawson high
cracking
salary
edition
cards.
of Rodown Showdown. It should be a high scoring shootout. And I wonder if it comes down to high score, if that high score is going to be 150 plus.
It's well, these are our plug and plays. Hey, I almost prefer the plug and play
Oh,
editions.
yeah. So exciting. Like
I think finals would be good for that too.
some of
Finals
these,
is it's
like
not.
last week with the pods, like Luke Nant, Curvis, and Isaac coming, I'm like, oh my God, just get to 60 points.
That's not a
Just
showdown.
give me 60 points. I
That's
might
not
win.
a showdown. That's so sad. Look at that, 62 against 53. Oh, every time we got a 46 in a Brodown
Oh.
showdown. That's not cutting it, mate. That is not cutting it. So, yeah, I think we almost stick with the Brodown showdown being plug and plays more often than not. I reckon that's probably the way to go. So bring on finals where we can bring out the big dogs a bit more often.
No, I love it. And obviously, to kind of go into that Brodown showdown, obviously it is 10-9 to pity. We are going to play all the way through the final series to see who can come out on top. So we're going to continue all the way.
Double points for the finals.
Okay, so yeah.
And then I reckon, well, hang on. So you get 2 points essentially.
So
for a
after last year when I swept you 4-0, I'll get all 8 points. Is that what you're saying?
Well, what about in the grand final? Let's reassess where we're at, and we might even
So if you're
up the
behind,
stakes.
you mean?
Well, I won't be, but we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, maybe we do double points. I like that. Up the stakes a little bit, or we could even like increase each week, possibly. But we'll see. I'm keen to do
The
something
amount of
like
points
that as well.
based
Just
on
make
the
sure.
week of finals it is.
Yeah, something like that. Let's workshop that maybe off air, hey. And all our coaches, let's make sure you're commenting in the chat as well. Let us know who you think is going to take out that Brodown showdown. If it'll be Haz or myself, and get yourself that chance to win some cards, particularly coming into the final series. And speaking of cards and coming to the final series, use that code on screen, FBAR26. Get yourself 3 9-player common packs. And again, there's never a bad time to get started in GameDay squad. And our next show next week will be our wildcard finals preview. What's your footy looking like next week, Haz? Are we live for that one?
It depends if we get through our elimination final on Saturday, which fingers crossed we do. We've beat them twice this season, so we should still be alive for next week. So it might be a Bales joining you on that show potentially.
I'll have to hit him up. We'll see how we go. But, mate, thanks very much for a big episode. Good luck to all our viewers and listeners for the round ahead, the last round of the home and away season. Get excited, and then we're into some finals footy, mate. But as I said, thanks so much for joining.
Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me. Always good to preview what is our last round this season before finals kicks off. So best of luck to everyone. Hopefully everyone can finish the season on high. And all those coaches that are in prize card territory, hopefully you can hold ranks or even potentially move up and claim another spot in the prize card drafts, because that's what I'm trying to do myself.
And that's what I'm trying to prevent you from doing. I don't want you to go any higher, because that's where I'm in trouble. Oh, I've got to love it, though. All right, mate. Thanks very much. Thanks to everyone listening, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode by the Fantasy Bros. If you want to show your support, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this show on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Also, make sure you check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search @FantasyBrosAU.